Thank you, Wilma.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Wilma.
Oh, yeah, there's the
I'm honored to be in this first session. I'm honored to be in your session, Wilma. I'm quoting you so often about the reinforcing mechanisms of carbon materials. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see the interest in the circular industry. I strongly believe as a group, and I'm sure that this group here in this room is very diverse. Together we can build this circular industry. So Wilma introduced me. I want to start with what are tires and the life cycle of tires. So what you can see on the left side in this slide is a typical raw material portfolio. This is no special tire maker. This is just roundabout, and we can see half of it is polymers. And of the polymers already, when we want sustainability, we have about half natural rubber. So that's already a plus. Then we have carbon black. We all know that from 1972 on, the carbon black, at least in the tread, has been reduced a little bit, and silica was introduced, silica, silane, chemical bonding with higher performance. We have some additives. We have steel in car tires. We might have 10% steel. In truck tires, we have 20% steel. Then we have textiles only in car tires. So the raw material portfolio goes into a mixture of new tires. My figure, 36 million tons tire capacity of the production, of the global tire industry production. And then happens something interesting. In the use time, of course, we abrade the tires, and at some point we declare the tires end of life, or scrap tires or waste tires. Sometimes they still have a profile. Sometimes they can be resold as used tires. We get to that in a moment. But generally, just when a little bit less than 10% of the tires is taken off as tire wear particles, the tire is declared a waste. So we still have 90% of the tire, and the tire is a waste. And that is really the first point. For me, to recycle and to create sustainability in a tire is retreading. Now, the tire wear particles, I gave you some sources here. They go into the air, they go into the soil, they go into the water. This presentation is not about tire wear particles. There are other more specialized presentations just about that. We focus in that presentation on what is left from the tires. So, as I said, we can retread tires, we can reuse tires. I always smile when I think that maybe waste tires from Germany, they continue to run in Africa until really you reach the plies or the belts. And then when you really have the scrap tires, you have different ways of getting back the waste material back into tires. One is you can make circular synthetic polymers from tire pyrolysis oil. And these polymers, they come from the chemical recycling. They're just as virgin polymers. Of course, you can use reclaim, you can use devulcanizate, you can use rubber powder. Generally, the finer the rubber powder is, the more you can put, because then the question is also how much of the sustainable materials can you put into a tire without reducing the performance too much. And that really is the qualification for all sustainable materials. How much can you put? How many pHr can you put without suffering tire performance? And then you have, let's say, alternative carbon materials. This is the business I specialize in. You have recovered carbon black, and we know recovered carbon black is semi-reinforcing. So we can maybe replace a little bit of 600. We can go in the carcass, in the inner liner, in the sidewall, not really in the tread, unless there's only a very small addition to the tread. And we have the circular furnace carbon black based on tire pyrolysis oil. Here we can make all the carbon blacks because, again, it's chemical recycling, and we're just replacing the heavy fuel oil that is used as a source for the furnace. Bless you. For the furnace process to produce carbon black. Interestingly, of course, because we have the recovered carbon black playing in the soft black, the circular furnace carbon blacks tend to be hard blacks, so tend to be tread grades. maybe 300 grade or maybe 200 grade. Status update. So I want to take one step back for the industry. Let's say we are an investor. What is important? What do we look at if we invest into a new technology like recovered carbon black? And I want to focus now on recovered carbon black. So we need the technology, and you can see these are the Olympic rings, and there are really 5 important topics we need to cover. So we need to be sure about the technology. Then we need to cover all the regulatory items. So for recovered carbon black, is it a nanomaterial just like carbon black? REACH, end of waste, you know, this I will detail in a moment. We need to find investors, the right type of investor that understands the industry. We need partners, and with partners I mean the tire industry, development partners, because we know that recovered carbon black is not yet a commodity. We cannot just sell, we need to jointly develop the markets. And of course we need to ensure the green aspects. So let's deepen on that a little bit. However, I want to flag up already, I think 3 of the 5 are more or less covered, but there is 2, let's say, challenges that can be overcome in collaboration. Now, very often I hear people talking about the pyrolysis industry, and looking at that slide, I won't go into each and every detail. I would rather call the industry the recovered carbon black industry, because pyrolysis is just one step of 15 or 16 steps that are required. So we need to select the end-of-life tires. We need to granulate the end-of-life tires because then the surface is bigger and the pyrolysis will be more efficient. Then we have a condenser for separating the gas and the oil. The gas can go back and heat the pyrolysis. The oil goes into distillation or in the tank. And then we have the stream for recovered carbon black, which is, do I have a laser here? So we have the milling, we have wet granulation, we have drying, sieving, and storage. So it's a complex process, and we don't call the car an engine just because the core of the car is an engine. So I would pledge that we call the industry recovered carbon black industry rather than pyrolysis industry. There's some trends I want to highlight. So there's a trend from rotary kilns to auger kilns, even to fluidized bed, and that has to do with the improvement of the quality of the recovered carbon black and the oil. In one step, and also we have a trend from single stage to multiple stage to have the best of both worlds, because in a single stage we can maybe make conditions for a good recovered carbon black, but then the tire pyrolysis oil suffers a little bit. Also, keeping in mind we want to increase the green attributes. There's a trend from gas heated to electrically heated kilns. And with electrically heated kilns, we can source green power, we can source solar power, we can source wind power to further reduce the carbon footprint. This is the most exciting topic for me last year and this year, and I can't stop talking about it because we really want to commoditize recovered carbon black. We have a situation where when somebody asks, do you have recovered carbon black? Everybody says, yeah, I have recovered carbon black. In Europe, in the States, in South America, in Asia, in India, in Bangladesh, in China. But the question is whether every powder that is black and comes from pyrolysis is recovered carbon black. So ASTM has a work group, D36, which has been really progressing well in defining what is recovered carbon black. And there are carbon black makers, there are tire companies in there, there are recovered carbon black experts in there. So it's a nice collaboration. So recovered carbon black will get great names. Just like furnace carbon black, you know, N plus a number, and then the smaller the number, the higher reinforcing. And then we have the different categories of carbon black. Now we have different categories of recovered carbon black. And I really love it. The first figure in yellow is the particle size. Why the particle size? We need to mill recovered carbon black because when it comes out of the reactor, it has a very widespread particle size distribution between microns and millimeters. And we cannot put millimeter size material into tires there's a correlation to the size of the fillers as to how much they can reinforce, or whether they are an extender or a diluent, or even like an impurity that can be a faulty point for the rubber, a breaking point. So the smaller, the better, and we get numbers. There's a table with performances for each of these properties. The second one, which is important, is the toluene transmittance. With the toluene transmittance, we're measuring the organic volatiles. We need to avoid that the polymer fractions that turn into oil are still on the surface of recovered carbon black. So here, the higher, the better. What we might want to have is toluene transmittance higher than 95, so the light goes through the toluene that has nothing extracted, so it's not darker, and the transmission is very high. The third figure is the ash content. Now we know that recovered carbon black is not only carbon black. It has a payload. It has a payload with different inorganics, for example sulfur, for example zinc, and it has also an organic payload. So it has some fresh carbon from polymer carbonization in the pyrolysis, which is pretty much like when we make a pancake for breakfast and we leave it too long in the pan, it becomes black. So the same happens in the pyrolysis. We cannot avoid that some polymer turns into fresh carbon. And that goes on the surface. And that precisely is where I quote Wilmer and the surface of carbon blacks with the activation sites. So that is very important to look at the ash content. And also, this is where the selection of the tires is very, very important. In Europe, there's an ever-increasing trend to use more silica. So in Europe, we have the 3 or even higher, a 4, which means ash content higher than 25%. And this is due to the silica. Now, the most interesting and maybe the most defining property is the activity in rubber. That's a test that was developed by Continental, and that is now an ASTM test. There are very few labs in the world that can do this test. One is in Germany, of course, Continental Tire. I think ACE Labs can do the test as well in the US, but it's a new test clearly. And so this number defines the performance of our recovered carbon black. And it's good to have a small number in the beginning, and it's good to have the 6 at the ending. A 7 would mean that we are on the eye level of a 700 carbon black, not a 600 carbon black. A 5 would mean better than a 500, so 500 or 300. But in my opinion, this cannot be accomplished yet with current technology. Partnering. Partnering is super important. We cannot do the work alone. No pyrolysis company can conquer the world and build 200 plants. So I mentioned 3 collaborations which I find interesting. Black Cycle, we have Jean-Michel from Michelin here. He will present as well. It's Michelin lead, Aliapur, Hero Estato, Pyrum as a pyrolysis company, but also Greenval via Cisna Engineers, Orion as a carbon black maker, very nice ecosystem, very high objective of recycling 50% of European tires. I think by 2030, if I calculate 6 years after project finish. The one thing I would comment, the one thing missing for me as a recovered carbon black expert is there's no focus on recovered carbon black. And I always say we cannot beat the mass balance. If we have an output that is 40% of the pyrolysis, we need to valorize it. And there's opportunities. So that will come, I'm very sure. The second is the Zeppelin Smart Tire Alliance. And this is Zeppelin is an EPC company. There is ReOil pyrolysis company. They're also downstairs in the expo. Regom for sorting, Robojet, water jet company, Recycle, Entex, devulcanization, RCB Nanotechnologies. They have a stand as well with Zeppelin in the expo. Here, to me, I'm following the developments. It's not clear whether that will be an operational ecosystem, meaning that they really will build an ecosystem of all those companies, or whether it's a joint development work. Then there is the Korean Black Cycle. So Black Cycle, Michelin-led Black Cycle has inspired Korea to do an ecosystem as well. We have LD Carbon, who are also in the expo with a number of companies, OCI, Korean carbon black company. So these are very good developments. There will be a very nice announcement in Europe. It's already signed, but now the press release needs to be signed as well, of a global tire company, a big EU refinery, and a European recovered carbon black producer. I would have hoped that I can present the names. I can't, because the communication departments take some time. There's the Azure Network. We have Christina Good and Stefan Rau sitting in the first row here. They have a stand in the expo as well. It's a lobbying network, but with a lot of energy and a lot of momentum. So there are a number of very, very diverse people and technology companies. And I really like the speed this is taking and the inspiration people are getting from the Azure Network. Now, I always say people want to work with people. So very often I'm asked, what is the best pyrolysis technology? What is the best recovered carbon black technology? And I always tell people, select your partner, select the people first. The technology can be managed. If you have the right people, everything can be made to work. Green, so green credentials, and by the way, this is not recovered carbon black, this is activated carbon. So this is not recommended doing your face mask with recovered carbon black. Recovered carbon black, of course, is a circular product. It's supported by a tire pyrolysis oil as a secondary circular product. It has a low carbon emission. Typically, the carbon emissions, depending on the process, where they have a two-step process, for example, like black bear carbon, you have, of course, when you have two kilns, you have more emissions. But typically, you have below 1 ton in the sum of scopes 1, 2, 3. You have low pH. You can have a European 8 pH. That's a group of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. You can be below 4 ppm, and you can be below 40 ppm of the FDA 22. And we know that some of the really big PAH compounds that are in furnace carbon black are not even in those groups. So in the furnace carbon black, we can have up to 1000 ppm total PAH content. However, we got to talk about what might not be so green with recovered carbon black. How green is it to export European tires to Asia and then to re-import circular products to Europe? We're spending a lot of emissions on the transports. So the question is, how can we monitor that? How can we define that? Because it's very clear that in Asia, the industry is further built. It's more advanced. We have more companies converting tires into sustainable materials. In Europe, we really we haven't built the industry so far. Also, we need to talk about crystalline respirable silica. So if we have sand in the tires and we didn't clean the tires, we mill the recovered carbon black below 10 micron, then we have respirable crystalline silica, which is a substance of concern, of biotoxicity, monitored in Europe and in the US. We might have zinc oxide, although the tire maker puts the zinc oxide and it reacts to zinc sulfate. But we might have zinc oxide. We need to prove that there's no zinc oxide. If we have zinc oxide, again, we have biotoxicity. We need nasty labels on the packaging of recovered carbon black. Regulatory, mentioned already in the beginning, end of waste status in Europe is still in work. Maybe Alejandro will tell us a little bit in his presentation on updates on what we can expect in Europe. We have the end of waste status only in Spain, Portugal, Austria, for example, not in the other countries. So if we put product from one country to the other, we change the status of waste, which is a problem. REACH, we got good news in 22. Circtec and Alpha Carbon did the REACH registration. Now they do the biotoxicity test. The allowable production volume is very low as of now because they need to do the biotoxicity tests. But I think in a year or so, the production ban should go up. Recycling governance, my understanding, again, Arjando will maybe tell us more details, that there will be more governance by the EU on tire recycling by 2026. And one thing I've been working on with 5 companies on an RCB association. We didn't conclude last year because all these companies had financial issues, so we didn't formally found the association yet. But I believe the industry needs a voice and the industry needs to collaborate together. Investment. So this is red, and this is one of the challenges we have. The ideal investor really is strategic industrial capital. It's too late for venture capitalists. It's too early for private equity. Too small for infrastructure, although we have good news from Antin Infrastructure, Michelin and Enviro. So this is one good example where infrastructure fund has gone forward. Too complex for bank loans, and maybe closest to big tire, big petrol, big carbon black. Maybe tire companies, they're not used to producing oil and producing carbon materials. Maybe carbon black and petrol would be the sweet spot of big investors. For the small companies, the cash burn without operation is a big challenge. How can you pay all your development engineers if you don't have a cash flow? Tire industry, we've seen small equity investments so far, but currently my perception of the tire industry is the tire industry wants to buy material rather than to invest into the supply chain. Very positive second investment from BASF into Pyrum Innovations. This is, of course, motivated by sourcing TPO. What is the overview? I have 1 minute and a half left. So I didn't put company names. I mentioned some company names. The green dots, Enviro and Pyrum. In the UK, I put a red dot. You know, a company stopped following recovered carbon black pyrolysis projects. I put just some dots. You know, we could put maybe 100 dots in China and India alone. Taiwan is one of the green dots. Envestec is a nice company. India, maybe high green carbon. There's many more companies. LD, I didn't put the green dot on Korea. LD Carbon are good examples of recovered carbon black production in Asia. Generally, in the Western world, the investment is a challenge. In the States, 2 companies had financial problems, but they're on the mend and they're soon operating again. So, summary, there are some leading RCB companies in financial issues, not because the technology doesn't work, not because they couldn't sell the products. Large companies that could invest right now prefer to take in materials. I think that is a big opportunity for the industry to invest more in the supply chain. And again, the ASTM classification for me will be a stepping stone to commoditize recovered carbon black so that the buyers can order a certain performance of a material and the producer knows what they need to produce. Thank you very much. I hope you have questions.
Thank you, Martin, for this very nice overview and your own thoughts about recycling and recycled carbon black in particular. Are there any questions from the auditorium? There is a microphone which is a static one, so unfortunately you have to queue up at the microphone. You can also use slido.com. I have one question here, so it is working. If you did not... Oh, okay, great. Yeah. If you want to use it, there is a password which is hashtag tire with a capital T. So that should work as well if you prefer that.
Wilma, maybe you can put the QR on, because that QR goes to my website. I should have put the Slido QR on the last slide.
No, I can show the QR. first his question.
It's not working, but I can speak louder.
Can you switch on the microphone, please, Mr. Technician?
I switch on locally, but okay, it works.
Yes.
Works now.
So,
the question you mentioned before that there is no a European consensus on how to change basically a waste into a second raw material, but there are some local possibility. You mentioned Austria, Spain, and Portugal, if I remember.
Yes, Italy, I think, as well. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So now I come from Italy, but I don't know how it works. I mean the steps. So what is to do to take some waste and to make it
Yes.
a second raw material? Is some
There's a
similarities between the procedures?
There's a hierarchy. So if there's nothing on the federal level, meaning EU, it goes to the country level. But some countries have defined the end of waste, some not. So if your country doesn't have defined the end of waste, then it goes to the local, to the community. And for example, where I live in Berlin, there's a big tire recycler, Genan, and they make rubber powder. And they had to apply to the state, to the regional state, not Germany, but the federal state. And they got the end of waste this way. So, but then of course it gets very tricky for companies that have multiple production sites. You need to talk to many people. It would be much easier to solve this at the EU level, of course.
Okay, so it's basically the cost of this registration. It's normally in the hands of the manufacturer.
Yes. And of course it's bound to the manufacturing site.
A single plant.
Yeah. And of course you want it because otherwise your customers need a waste license, a waste treatment license, which doesn't make sense.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think that for the let's say for the user, the problem is to receive a waste in the premises, even before using it.
Yeah.
It's just you cannot receive a waste.
Yeah.
And do something about it.
Yeah.
Because you're not a recycler company or something.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for this question. I will now switch to the question from the audience. And now, yeah, you all can see it over there. Martin, you can also read it. It's about.
Okay. Has the R2436 type nomenclature been accepted or adopted by many recovered carbon black suppliers? I'm especially curious about activity in rubber. No, I have to say this is not a published standard yet. It's not published because the particle size method is not published yet. When this is published, then the classification will be published as well. I think the deadline is December this year. I'm using it already because the particle size method is pretty well known and the activity in rubber is already an established standard. There, as I mentioned, the challenge is we have very few labs that can do it. What you need for it, you need a rubber process analyzer, RPA. This will set you back some 120,000 euros and then you have to know how to use it and how to calculate. So it is straightforward, but it has not yet been widely adopted by the industry. Also, especially the recovered carbon black suppliers, they're growing. Their intention is to build the manufacturing capacity. Many of them don't have yet the money to build their own labs, so they use external labs to test the product. So it's premature, but I think this is the way to commoditize and to bring recovered carbon black of a defined quality into the market. And I work also, I have a program, I call it Top Carbon, and where I put recovered carbon black producers and recovered carbon black users together, and we'll define for each of these grades what is the performance in which application and map the market, because this is the only reliable way to map the market and to actually help users of recovered carbon black not to have a single source, a single supplier from one company, but to be able to say, I want this type of recovered carbon black, and this gives me 3-4 different suppliers I can choose from and with whom I can negotiate the price.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much.
Again, Martin.
Thank you very much.